Thanks for joining me. This is Beverly. All of the dimensions for the project that I'm making today is based on the fact that we're using the M&M's mini snack size, and they nestle inside of a little French fry box that's cut with a Cricut, and on the outside is a little matchbook cover. The heart on the inside and also the outside are also cut with the Cricut machine. So when you're finished, you have a cute little treat. It can also be used as like an office favor for a great place to work team or sunshine committee. Here are some other color schemes that I've used in the past for a similar treat box. These are filled with a different kind of chocolate, and consequently the sizes are a little bit smaller. I have all of the information posted on my blog about the sizes for these little treats. If you'd like to check into that, the information is posted below. And we're going to get started on our project for today. In order to produce a number of these relatively quickly, you'll want to limit the number of steps that you take. So the first thing that I'm going to do is cut off a piece of the paper that I don't need. What you need for each individual matchbook cover is a 9.5 by 2.5 inch strip of paper. So I'm going to cut off a 2.5 by 12 inch strip of paper and set that aside to use as one of my strips, but then I can get 4 more from that other piece of paper. Now you can cut off the other 2 inches off of the other end if you'd like to do that now, or in this case I'm going to score the whole thing, and I'll show you how I can score for all 4 at one time because I haven't cut it apart yet. So rather than cut up each individual piece and score it, it's a lot easier to score one big piece and then cut it into the smaller sections. By doing it that way, you save yourself a little bit of time, but you do have to sort of orient your paper the right way to make sure you're doing it the way that you need to for where the score marks need to go. Right now I'm cutting off on that extra strip that I had, I'm cutting off at that extra 2.5 inches to show you what your strips will look like when you're finished. And normally then you would, if you were only making a few, you would cut them apart and do it this way, where you would score them at the 2.5 inch mark, the 3 inch mark, the 7 and the 7.5 inch mark, where you're going to use those same score marks and do the entire paper so that you can then cut it all up into the 4 strips that you need. I'm going to speed through this part so that you don't need to watch the whole thing, but you can see what I'm doing. Now I'm going to speed through the cutting of the 2.5 by 9.5 inch strips. I got 4 out of this section plus the one from before, so there's 5 from each 12 by 12 piece of paper. This paper is very easy to fold on the score lines now. I have the 4 folds that I need to make, which will let my French fry box nestle inside. And with double-sided paper, you can choose which color you want to have on the outside. And you'll see that I chose a few different colors. I used up some of my scraps from other ones. For Valentine's, I figured it didn't matter if the kids didn't all get the exact same one. That was a good way for me to use up some papers that I had. I used pattern paper for the outside of the matchbook covers, but I used a plain cardstock for the inside. And if you want to stamp it to make it more decorative, you certainly can. I'm going to show you random stamping right now that I did do on some that I had cut. I left on my Cricut mat. I prefer to cut the shapes out first and then stamp if I'm going to do random stamping, because then if I have big scraps left over, I won't have necessarily stamped on them on something that I don't want to use for the future. This stamp set is called Love Life, from Close to My Heart. The ink and the cardstock are also from Close to My Heart. It's blush color, and I like to do that where it's tone on tone because it gives you a nice subtle effect. The random stamping that I'm doing here is only on the part of the French fry box that's going to show. The shorter side is going to be glued down to the inside of the matchbook covers. Normally when you're random stamping, you try to do things in a triangular type shape so that you make sure you're covering the page all in a very nice random organic fashion. In this case, since each individual French fry box is going to stand alone, I don't need to worry about rotating my stamps so much. However, force of habit, I tend to turn them around a little bit anyway. And then because this is getting glued onto the inside of the matchbook cover, it doesn't need to be stamped completely, so the whole page isn't completely full there. These French fry boxes were cut at 5¼ inches on the Cricut, and as you can see, I was able to get 6 out of each 12 by 12 piece of paper. With the Cricut, it does give you the little perforations and also obviously the cuts for folding in those little flaps, which is really very helpful and very handy. You don't even need a bone folder if you don't want to use one to be able to fold those in. I have found that when I am gluing the cardstock, I've tried all different kinds of adhesive, and it does seem that white glue, wet white glue, works better for longer term adhesion than like a tape runner does. So even though it is a little messy, I do use the glue because I want to make sure it's going to stick and hold the candy in place, and so it's worth it to me to have that little extra mess. The one thing about the glue, of course, is that then you need to kind of hold it together until it has a few moments to kind of set up, and so it does take a little bit, just a smidge bit longer to dry, and so that is something to kind of keep in mind when you're making a lot of things. So as you can see, the short side is the side that you would normally see in a French fry box, but this is the side that's going to get glued down into the matchbook cover, and the longer side, which is normally the back, is going to be facing out. And that sort of contains the candy a little bit better, and it also gives us a nice surface. You can write on that surface. My daughter elected to write her name on little hearts, and we are gluing those on instead. If you were going to write on them, it would be easier to write on them prior to doing all of the folding and gluing, though. That Tombow adhesive that I'm using seems to hold really well. I've used it on a lot of projects, and it's still holding up very well. And I really do want things to last as long as possible. I realize with children, they're going to rip into their Valentines and they don't care, but I want it to make it at least all the way to school. So that's why I did opt for that white glue. I think Elmer's might work if you had your kids helping you, and actually my 7-year-old did help me with almost every step of the way, so this is something that children can certainly do and be a part of, and in our family I would certainly want her to be a part of it. If you're making this with younger children, maybe a name stamp might be a fun thing for them to use for their names rather than writing their name over and over again on the inside. And then on the outside, we did stamp a little conversation heart type message. So we're using a Close to My Heart stamp set, and it's 2 separate parts. One part says "You Are" and the other part says "Sweet," and we put them together on the same acrylic block to be able to make our little conversational heart candy-like looking thing. We're using the blush ink again and stamping it right in the middle of the heart to go on the front of the matchbook cover. Now I'm going to adhere the larger heart to the outside front, and I'm putting glue just at the top part of the heart because I want to leave a little space at the bottom for that flap to tuck into, and then that will hold the cover closed. So I'm adhering the top part of the heart to the top flap and making sure that my bottom part can go into there without any problems and without running into the glue, because I don't want to glue the whole thing together. That is another reason why I do like using wet glue sometimes, is that it gives me a little bit of time and maneuverability that you don't always have if you use like a tape runner. So they're all stamped, and I wanted to show you, this is the negative cut edge from the Cricut. These are the ones that are cut at 2 1/4 inches, and 16 will fit on a 12 by 12 inch piece of paper. The smaller ones are at 1 1/2 inches, and 49 will fit on a 12 by 12 inch piece of paper, so you get quite a few. So our last step is to put it all together with a little bit of baker's twine. I'm using the plain white baker's twine on the purple colored matchbook, but red and white baker's twine would look really cute on the other ones. Really any color ribbon would work, just plain string or yarn, whatever you have. And I think it looks really cute to just have it sort of tied up like a little gift. It's fairly inexpensive, and I still think it's a nice little treat for the kids to open, or as I said, if you're giving it to your office mates, or you know, just like little party favors or something, it's kind of a nice fun thing. So to make 20 of these little cuties, I needed 12 pieces of 12 by 12 either cardstock or pattern paper or a combination thereof. I also needed one extra white piece of cardstock as a scrap just to make those 4 hearts that didn't fit on that one 12 by 12 piece of paper. The only thing I went out and purchased was the candy. Everything else I already had, and so this was a relatively inexpensive project and a lot of fun for my daughter and I to make together. I really appreciate your time in watching today. This is Beverly from scrapandthread.blogspot.com. Leave me any comments if you have any questions. Thanks so much.